Good afternoon, Wolfpack, and welcome to today's lesson. You should have already done Bellwork 6 with your video, and now we're going to be doing the equations of parallel and perpendicular lines notes. When you're done with the notes video, there will be an Edulastic in your Google Classroom. Please make sure that you complete that. And your homework tonight is 1.7 angles video. Make sure that you do that before next class. Do keep in mind that I'm recording this during the school day, and so if the announcements come on, I will pause this video as quickly as possible. And again, make sure that you're on your best behavior for the guest teacher. I only want to hear positive reports about my students. So let's get started. Our topic is 1.6, equations of parallel and perpendicular lines. And our essential question is, how does the slope determine parallel and perpendicular lines? Let's do our vocabulary first. The slope criteria for parallel lines. Two non-vertical, meaning they are not north to south. Two non-vertical lines are parallel if and only if they have the same slope. If you look at that first graph, the slope is 1/2, the slope is 1/2. Those two lines are parallel because their slopes are congruent. 1/2 is equal to 1/2. Next point, all horizontal lines are parallel to each other. That should make sense. If they run east to west, no matter how close they are, how far apart they are all parallel to each other. And the same thing is true about all vertical lines. They are also parallel to each other. All north to south lines are parallel to each other. So parallel lines are pretty easy to spot, maybe a little bit more so than perpendicular lines. Perpendicular lines, the slope criteria for them is they are only perpendicular if and only if the product of their slopes is -1. Product means they're being multiplied together. So m of the slope 1 times slope 2 equals -1. And let's look at an example. -2/3 and +3/2. -2/3 times +3/2 is -6/6. -6/6 reduces to -1. So sure enough, those two lines are perpendicular to each other because the product of their slopes is -1. Next point, the slopes of perpendicular lines are called opposite reciprocals. Opposite reciprocals. Opposite has to do with their signs. Reciprocal means it's basically flipped or upside down. Notice that with -2/3, -2/3 is negative, and then 3/2 is positive, and then obviously they were reciprocals from each other, 2 and 3. Okay, so if you're looking at the slope, you can see if they are perpendicular, if they meet that requirement. Lastly, any horizontal line with any vertical line are also perpendicular. So if it's a completely straight east to west line with a completely straight north to south line, they're going to be perpendicular to each other. Okay. One more thing to notate before we move on to the next part is perpendicular lines are often notated with that right angle mark because perpendicular lines form right angles. So if you see that right angle mark, it means those lines are perpendicular. Example number 1, write the equation of the vertical and horizontal lines. Letter A, what is an equation of the line that's perpendicular to x equals -1 and it has to go through the point -2, 3? Well, the first thing I want you to do is just sketch out a graph really quickly. Here's my axis. I have x and I have y. So x equals -1. So -1 on the x-axis is where my line's going to go through. Well, that means it's going this way because it has to go through -1. That's x equals -1. Well, if it's going to be perpendicular to this line, so think about it. This line is a vertical line. If it's going to be perpendicular, like the problem says, perpendicular, it has to go the other direction. So it has to go horizontally. Well, if it's going to go horizontally, is it going to pass through the x-axis or is it going to pass through the y-axis? Well, if x equals 1 passed through the x-axis, then we need the line y equals something. Okay, so y equals, okay, so sorry about that. So we already have our vertical line. We need a horizontal line because it needs to be perpendicular. So it's going to be a y equals. Well, which of these is the y coordinate? Is -2 the y coordinate, or is 3 the y coordinate? 3 is the y coordinate. So the equation of the line would be y equals 3. And if you sketch it out, this was -1, so this was -1, so -2, and then 1, 2, 3. So here is -2, 3. Okay, that's this point right here. -2, 3. There's my line that goes through -2, 3. Y equals 3. Okay, hopefully that'll be the last disruption for a few minutes. So we had an x equals line. We needed a line that was perpendicular to it, so going the opposite direction, which meant our answer was going to be a y equals line. So y equals 3 is the answer to that equation. Let's do another one. Letter B. What is an equation of the line that's parallel to y equals 2 that's going to go through the point 5, -3? Again, just sketch out your quick line, your x-axis, your y-axis, y equals 2. So your line is going this way. Excuse me, because it has to pass through 2. So this is the equation of the line y equals 2. Well, we want a line that's parallel to it. So it's going to go the same direction. So it's also going to be a y equals, because if it was an x equals, it'd be going the opposite direction. Again, which of these coordinates is the y? The 5 and the -3. -3 is the y coordinate. So your answer is y equals -3. And if you want to kind of sketch it out, there's your y equals -3. Okay. So horizontal vertical lines don't have those extra things. They're just a letter equals a number. Let's move on to the back side. Example number 2. Write the equation of each line in slope-intercept form. I'm going to go ahead and put slope-intercept form right over here. Go away. Sorry, I blew it too far. Put it right here. Y equals mx plus b. So it's going to be parallel to y equals -5x plus 1, and it has to pass through this point. So this is going to be necessary. So the slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. We need two things. We need the m, we need the b. Well, our new line has to be parallel to our existing line. And we know from our notes that parallel lines have the same slope. So this slope is -5. So our new slope is also going to be -5. The second thing we need is the b. They didn't give us the b, but they did tell us that it passes through the point -2, 1. So if we take the slope-intercept form and we plug in this for x, -1 for x and 2 for y, and we plug in the slope that our line's going to have. Remember, it's going to have -5 because it's parallel to our original one. We will be able to find the b. So 2 equals -5 times -1 plus b. And this should be familiar. This is stuff from Algebra 1. 2 equals 5 plus b. -3 equals b. So now I have my slope and I have my y-intercept. So now that I have those two items, I can now write the equation of the line. Y equals -5x minus 3. Okay, this board is going crazy on me. Not really sure what's going on. So m was -5, b was -3, and there is your answer. Okay? It's parallel to our original equation because they have the same slope, so -5, -5, and we use the -5 and the point they gave us to find our b. Let's do another example. The line perpendicular to -4x plus y equals -2, and it needs to pass through 3, -1. Well, the first thing we need to do is to put this in slope-intercept form. So -4x plus y equals -2. I'm going to add 4x to both sides because I want to get y by itself. So y equals 4x minus 2. That's in slope-intercept form. We need a line that's perpendicular to this line. Well, how are lines perpendicular? If they have the opposite reciprocal slope. Figure out what our slope is going to be, what our y-intercept. This slope is m equals 4, or you could say it as 4/1 if that makes more sense to you. So the opposite of that would be negative. The reciprocal of that would be 1/4. So our slope is going to be -1/4 because it's going to be perpendicular to 4, okay, to the y equals 4x minus 2. So now I'm going to take my new slope, the -1/4, and I'm going to take the point that they gave me, which is 3, -1. I'm going to plug it in and find my y-intercept. Let me change the color here. So we have y equals mx plus b. I'm going to use the -1 for the y, the -1/4 for the x, that's our new slope, that's the slope that we need, the 3 for the x, plus b. -1 equals -3/4 plus b. I need to make -1 into an improper fraction. So this would be -4/4 equals -3/4 plus b. I want these to have the same denominator. Okay. I'm going to add 3/4 to both sides. When I add 3/4 to both sides, I have -1/4 on the left equals b on the right. So I found my y-intercept by using my new slope and the point they gave me. So my y-intercept is -1/4. And now I can write the equation of my line. Okay. The equation of my line is y equals -1/4, my new slope, x minus 1/4, my new b, my new y-intercept. That's the answer. Okay. This line, -1/4, and this slope, 4, are perpendicular to each other. They are opposite reciprocals. If at any time you're having any questions or need any help, make sure that you pause this video, you write down your questions, and you can also ask your guest teacher if they're able to help you as well. Next problem. Write the equation of each line, again, in slope-intercept form. It needs to be parallel to this line, and it's going to pass through 9, -6. The first thing you need to do is get the equation that they give you into slope-intercept form so it's easier to work with. So -x plus 3y equals 12. The first thing I'm going to do is add an x to both sides. 3y equals x plus 12. Y is still not by itself, so I'm going to divide each piece by 3. Each term is being divided by 3. Y equals 1/3 x plus 4. So we need y equals something x plus something. We need the m and the b. So we need to figure out what our m is going to be and what our b is going to be. Okay? So our new line is parallel to this line that we just worked on. That means they're going to have the same slope. So I can just come right over here and write 1/3. I'm going to plug in the point they gave us, 9 and -6, and I'll be able to find my new y-intercept because at that point I will only have one variable. So instead of a y, I have -6 equals My slope is 1/3. My x is 9 plus b. Okay, so I had y equals mx plus b. I replaced y, m, and x with values. Okay, y was -6, m was 1/3, and x was 9. And now I can solve for b. -6 equals 3 plus b, because 1/3 of 9 is 3. I'm going to subtract 3 from both sides. -9 equals b. So now I have my new y-intercept, -9. I'm going to write out my equation. Y equals 1/3 x plus a -9. Or if you want to write it as y equals 1/3 x minus 9. So my slope, 1/3, is parallel to my original slope of 1/3. They're the same. The slopes are the same, so the lines are parallel. And I used the slope and the point they gave me to find the b, and I rewrote y equals mx plus b as y equals 1/3 x minus 9. We have one more problem. I want you to pause the video, and I want you to try to work out this problem on your own, and then play the video to see me walk through it. Okay, let's talk about what I have so far. This problem says the line that's perpendicular to y equals -2/5 x plus 12, and it has to pass through -6, 8. Well, it's nice because they gave this line to us in slope-intercept form, so we don't have to even rearrange that line. We need the line that's perpendicular to it. Oh, wrong line. Perpendicular. So that's not the same slope, that's opposite reciprocal. So opposite means it's positive, reciprocal upside down. So you can see that our slope is going to be 5/2. 5/2. And then it has to pass through the point -6, 8. So if you look over at the second part, I wrote y equals mx plus b. I replaced y with -8, m with my new slope, 5/2, x with -6, because that's the point they gave us, -6, -8, and then I have plus b. And we can solve for b. So -8 equals -30 over 2, 5 times -6 is -30, plus b. And if you don't have all this written down, make sure you're pausing it and writing everything down. -8 equals -15 plus b. I'm going to add 15 to both sides. I have 7 equals b. 7 equals b. So I'm going to come over here. There's my 7. Now I need to write the equation of the line. Y equals m. My slope is 5/2. X plus 7. And you want to double check. The original slope was -2/5. My slope is +5/2. Are those opposite reciprocals? Yes, they are. And if they have the same y-intercept, this is 12 and this is 7, you might want to look at that. You're not going to use this y-intercept in your new equation. You have to find your new y-intercept. So I don't want to just see you dragging the original y-intercept down to the equation, because your equation will most likely be 100% wrong if you do that. Okay, I know that was a little bit longer than normal, but like I said, this is what you were doing during class today. You're not doing this as homework, so I wanted to walk through every step with you. So I want you to go back to the first page. Make sure you have all of your vocabulary in there, horizontal and vertical lines. Keep in mind, horizontal lines are parallel to each other, vertical lines are parallel to each other. Perpendicular lines. Any horizontal line is perpendicular to any vertical line. And their slopes are perpendicular, their lines are perpendicular, if and only if their slopes multiply together and result in -1. We had a horizontal line x, sorry, we had a horizontal line x equals -1, a vertical line x equals -1, and we found the vertical, we had a vertical line x equals -1, and we found that the line perpendicular to that was the horizontal line y equals 3. Okay, perpendicular line x to y. Parallel lines run the same direction, so we had the line y equals 2, and the line that was parallel to it was y equals -3. In example 2, we were writing our equations in slope-intercept form. Make sure that you find your new slope and find your new y-intercept. Those are the things that you need. If you do not write down your slope and your y-intercept right here, then you will not be able to write the new equation. You have to know both pieces. The slope you can normally find by looking at the original equation that they give you, this original line, but the y-intercept you have to find using this point and the slope. So some math is required. And that's what we did for example 2a, 2b, and then the triads as well. If you have any questions, please make sure you're writing them down, and I will go over this with you next class, but I expect for this to be done. You need to now do the Edulastic assignment that is posted in Google Classroom. A grade will be taken on that. Again, I hope you guys are being on your best behavior. Have a great day, Wolfpack, and I will see you when I return.